All right, guys, so we got to talk about a fascinating news story out of Atlanta involving Stop Cop City, which is basically a decentralized social movement out of Atlanta or outside of Atlanta, in which the goal is to stop the construction of Atlanta's public safety training center by the Atlanta police and the city of Atlanta. Now, I have talked about this story here before in the past, as the people that are occupying this space that is supposed to be turned into a training facility is no other than Antifa, okay, who in my opinion is a part of the biggest terrorist threat to this country, domestic terrorist threat, which is woke supremacy, okay? And Antifa is a part of woke supremacy. It's funny how the FBI and the Democrats are not sounding the alarms on the threat domestically that is posed by this terror organization that is more than just an idea, right? But in my past news stories, right, I've covered this and I've talked about how some of these Antifa protesters have been arrested for acts of violence, including arson and, basically conspiring to do harm against police officers and stuff like that. They've been arrested. So there has been a lot of tension between the local police and these activists out there in this forest area outside of Atlanta. And it has finally escalated into a deadly situation as an Antifa protester got smoked by police after getting in a shootout with police, as police were basically running an operation to pull the protesters out of the forest that they were occupying. And again, there was a shootout. The protester, the Antifa goon, allegedly shot at police first, and then they smoked them. And now Antifa wants to throw a fit about it, and basically they're now threatening police, and Atlanta is on high alert because of these threats now. So I want to talk about this, but before I get into it, I want to play a couple news clips so that you guys can get a better understanding of what's going on here, and then we'll get into it. Take a look.
Georgia State Trooper shot and a protester killed during what the GBI director is calling a clearing operation at the controversial Cop City. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Tom Haynes.
I'm Courtney Bryant. The deadly shooting happened this morning on the DeKalb County property that will soon turn into a huge training facility for the Atlanta Police and Fire Departments.
Tonight we begin our team coverage with Fox 5's Angelique Proctor, who's in DeKalb County, where that shooting took place. Angelique, what's the latest?
Well, the GBI director says law enforcement realizes they have a problem on their hands trying to get these illegal occupiers out of the forest. He says that's exactly why they showed up this morning, and they had no idea they would be met with gunfire. Our Fox 5 cameras were rolling when state troopers pulled a defiant protester out of the woods at Cop City Wednesday. It happened shortly after the GBI says a routine clearing operation to flush activists out of the forest turned deadly.
An individual, without warning, shot a Georgia State Patrol trooper. Other law enforcement personnel returned fire in self-defense. The individual who fired upon law enforcement and shot the trooper was killed in the exchange of gunfire.
The 85-acre scene remained active. There was a mammoth law enforcement presence all around the entire site. Paramedics rushed the injured trooper to Grady Memorial Hospital. The GBI is not yet ready to talk about the deceased protester.
We're not going to go into that right now, into notification of next of kin.
The man they placed in handcuffs taunted police by constantly sticking out his tongue and covering his face with his hair. He spoke to us about the future training facility.
Yeah, they're demolishing the encampment in the forest. They're sending in drones and chemical weapons against free-sitters, and they're rounding everybody up to charge them with exaggerated charges.
Atlanta police are on high alert because of threats of violence days after officers killed a protester. This morning, 7 protesters are behind bars, all facing domestic terrorism charges. It's the latest in a series of demonstrations at the site of a proposed police training facility. Channel 2's Brian Mims is live for us at the DeKalb County Jail. And Brian, these arrests are not stopping other protesters.
Exactly. A small but very loud group of protesters gathered here last night. They came to support those locked up here, saying they do not deserve to be in jail. On Thursday night, protesters hoped the 7 demonstrators jailed in DeKalb County could hear them.
The state of Georgia is trying to arrest and suppress and literally murder peaceful protesters.
The Georgia Bureau of Investigation says over the past year, demonstrations against the proposed police training center here have been anything but peaceful. It says protesters have set fires, thrown Molotov cocktails, and vandalized contractor offices. And the GBI says on Wednesday, officers were trying to get those who set up camp in the woods to leave. It says that's when Manuel Teran shot a trooper, putting him in the hospital. Officers say they shot back, killing Teran.
We need an independent investigation, as community movement builders has asked for, because we don't believe it happened the way that the police said that it happens.
On Instagram, Stop Cop City posted this photo of Teran, saying he spent time between Atlanta and Florida. We looked into the background of the 7 protesters arrested. Some had no criminal offenses on record. Others had violations relating to traffic or drug and alcohol offenses. Records show, like Teran, they do not live in Georgia. They have addresses as far away as Maine and Ohio.
Literal state suppression, and it's happening right here in Atlanta.
Shortly after the shooting, flyers calling for a night of rage and violent retaliation began circulating. They made no specifics on a location, but Twitter has suspended the account that announced that violence is going to happen. Neighbors, meanwhile, around that site are on high alert. We'll hear from them coming up in our next half hour.
Yeah, and of course, we're hoping this gets resolved relatively quickly, Brian, but it was interesting to see where all of those people arrested were from all around the country, as opposed to being from right here. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? My question is, what do these people do for a living? Like, how in the world do you, well, I guess I can see how you survive, but what do you do for a living? Right? If you could just hang out all day in the middle of the woods and outside of Atlanta, basically hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from home for some of these people. Again, what are you doing for a living? Are you just a bum for a living? Are you a so-called activist for a living? Is that what you do? Again, it's amazing. Almost as amazing as the fact that these people are protesting and are butthurt about the fact that one of their comrades was smoked by police after allegedly shooting at the police first. I mean, I don't know what they thought was going to happen, right? But if you shoot at police first, yeah, you're most certainly going to lose your life, right? You're going to lose your life, and that's what happened to the guy. I don't think there's anything to really protest unless you believe that, you know, people should be able to just openly fire on police with no consequences, which, I mean, they actually probably do believe that, which is the problem. These people are cuckoo Cocoa Puffs, insane, and they're not living in reality, okay? They're out here protesting against the building of a police training facility in a state that none of them even live in. None of these people live in Georgia. They're not from Atlanta, so I don't understand what the hell does this have to do with you, right? What are you going to accomplish by stopping this police facility from being built? Even though I don't think they're actually going to be able to stop it. It's going to get built. It should be built. They're going to just have to cry about it. But again, let's say you did stop it. Well, what do you get out of it? What are you gaining? I don't think you're gaining anything. And what really kind of bothers me about this, guys, is the deafening silence from the left, aka the Democrat Party, on this issue of Antifa, who openly are antagonizing cops. This is not the only situation where we have Antifa doing this to police officers. I think last year, 2022, maybe even 2021 as well too, was particularly a bad year for cops in regards to being killed by criminals, losing their lives in the line of duty. And police are silent on this issue, right? But when it comes to Capitol Police, Democrats are virtue signaling from the rooftops about how much they love law enforcement, right? They love police when it comes to the Capitol Police and how they handled the January 6th protesters. But when it comes to normal, regular police officers that are working across the country that, you know, they've been attacked, they've been targeted by groups like Antifa, again, the silence is deafening. The Democrats have nothing to say about it. It's almost as if they actually don't give a damn about police. They don't give a damn about law enforcement unless it is law enforcement that is protecting them, right? Again, it's amazing to me because if you listen to the Democrats in regards to how they talk about the Capitol Police, you would think that These people, they love police. They support police, right? And anybody who attacks the police, they're the worst people in the world, okay? They're terrible folks. They should be condemned, and this is a threat that needs to be handled. But they have nothing to say about Antifa, who, again, routinely is engaging in activities like this that are putting the lives of police officers in danger. They're openly calling for violence, okay, against police officers. That's what they're doing. Liberals have nothing to say about it. The Capitol Police-loving Democrats have nothing to say about it. But yet they want to scream at the top of their lungs about white supremacy. Again, I'm not seeing too many stories about white supremacists huddled up committing acts of, domestic terrorism like this, right? I'm not seeing too many of those stories. If anybody has any of those stories, please send them to me. I would like to see them. But I do see plenty of stories like this about Antifa, right? And what they're doing and the acts of domestic terrorism that they're committing. Democrats and FBI don't seem to be too concerned about it. They don't seem to have that on their radar. But they got the imaginary threat of white supremacy on their radar. Which, I mean, again, I haven't really seen much, right, about that when it comes to, stories like this. Haven't seen it. Again, it's amazing how that works. I think our priorities are out of line in Washington when it comes to the real domestic terror threats to this country, because it's a shame that Antifa is still being allowed to operate like this and we have not done anything about it. But yet we're having these meetings and congressional hearings on so-called white supremacy when, again, I don't think that's the actual real threat to this country, at least not as much as these Antifa terrorists who, again, a lot of them happen to be white, right, that are committing these acts of violence in these cities and against police officers. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.